you, Bill. I first became interested in this topic after being in the field of child and youth mental health for 30 years when the Canadian Mental Health Association Toronto branch approached me and a few other folks out here in Durham region and asked if we'd be interested in learning more about an in-class mental health education program that not only addressed mental health but addressed stigma, and it was a basis for contact-based education. And when I heard all of this, we got really excited and started rolling with it. So we've been doing it for 10 years, and I'd like to try my best to share 10 years' worth of information with you in the next 14 minutes. Next slide, please. We believe in partnerships, and I'll go on in a few minutes and talk about the different sectors that we have. But the partnership is important in order, as Heather indicated, in order to accurately address this issue. We were looking locally at people who are interested in participating in the project. And we weren't just talking about service provider agencies, but we were talking about educators, we were talking about students, and we were talking about consumers who we could all involve with the project. And we found that once they were involved, people were adding more time to the project. Agencies were donating more time and kind from their staff to help out in the project because they saw the benefits of participation. Next slide, please. So you can see that right now in Durham region we have 11 service provider agencies and 4 school boards that all have schools in Durham region, plus our speakers and students involved on the coalition. And we found it important to have cross sectors. So we have representation from health, mental health, education, youth justice, addictions, special needs, and treatment service agencies. And we find that with each person from each agency at the table, it brings a different lens that they see and a different bit of creativity. And we each learn from one another on the best ways to keep the project growing and make it more alive and add on to it. So everybody comes with a different background and makes it exciting and it's good for growth. Next slide, please.
Bob, just a reminder, if you could announce the slide for help people who are on telephone only.
Okay, so we're on slide 23 right now.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to go back a bit and let people know that because, we believe that contact-based education was the key to the success of the program, we wanted to take our time in terms of training and supporting speakers properly so that they were comfortable in telling the stories, and we were in absolutely no rush to take this and hurry it into the schools until our speakers were quite ready and felt supported to do that. So you can see that 10 years ago in 2002, there were 4 agencies plus 1 school board on the coalition. We did a total of 5 presentations to a grand total of 260 youth in that entire school year. This is our first year out, and again, if we're going to give any advice to any group out there is to take your time, go slowly, and don't rush into it. So that you can see that 10 years later, just in the last school year alone, with the growth of the coalition and the trained speakers, we did 95 presentations to over 10,000 youth and professionals in the school year. So that's the potential that we have in terms of growth. The next slide will be slide 24, please. Historically, in order to keep rolling, we wanted to recognize our speakers. They are volunteering to get out there and tell their stories of hope and recovery to those thousands of kids that I've talked about. And whenever we have the opportunity to nominate them for any type of local, provincial, national, or regional award, we do that. Whether they win or not is not important, but we let them know that we would like to acknowledge their contributions, and that's something that just you can just see them beam when they do that. And some of our staff have also been awarded as well. So this slide here just simply shows that some of the recognition that our speakers have received, and it doesn't include all the other nominations that we've done as well. They are front and center to the partnership here in Durham region. If I have the next slide, please, 25. In Durham region, we not only go into the schools and do education in classrooms in both elementary and high school, but we're supporting educators. And we're supporting educators in a number of ways, and we use contact-based education in professional development workshops for teachers, in parent-teacher nights and assemblies and those kinds of things. So we're trying to get the word out there, not to just the students, but also taking this model and spreading it out so that we're reaching the adults that are in touch with those students as well. We're using the time that we spend with our educators on giving them current information on referral processes, how to support youth who are on waiting lists to be seen, how to advocate for unique educational school-based needs, etc. So we have a number of projects and things happening in Durham region where Tammy is central to a lot of the work that's going on in terms of mental health. So not only do we sit at a local table, but we sit at other tables as well to help support other mental health initiatives that happen. And we connect people to our website as we're still building it and having them and we recognize the work that the schools are doing by featuring them on our websites as well. I don't need to read all of this to you, but I think you get the sense that this is something that has grown over time, and it's something that's fairly important here in Durham region, and we'd like to see that happening in other areas of the country as well. Next slide, please, be number 26. I guess one of the most innovative programs that the Coalition designed was called our Stomping Out Stigma Summit. We had some one-time funding from the Ministry of Children and Youth Services, and we decided that we would spend it on a student workshop. We really didn't know what we were getting into, but we wanted to educate students, involve our speakers, and run the students through this workshop. So we invited them to Ontario Shores. They spent the day with us. 30 representatives from 30 or 40 different high schools came down. And after the second summit, the feedback that we were getting, and I must say, let me back up a bit, that since 2002, we pre- and post-tested every student that we spoke to in any project that we did. So knowing that, with the post-test that we were doing on our summits, the feedback that we got was that the kids loved the information. They loved spending time with the speakers. They loved being able to have their questions answered and having some direction. But the big thing that they wanted to know was, what can we do now back in our own schools? What can we do to raise awareness and support kids that are struggling? What can we do to stomp out stigma in our school communities? That piece of information that we got from the students I felt was crucial. What it did was it caused us to put together our own toolkit, redesign our summits so that the future summits that they came to, we not only provided them with the contact-based education, but we also spent part of the afternoon of each day training the students or supporting the students on how to take the toolkits and start rolling things back out in their schools. And this is where we saw a lot of things starting to change and starting to improve at the schools. This was an exciting time. Next slide, please, slide 27. So I'll just quickly go through these. Each summit has a theme. Last year's was Free Your Voice, and we had lots of students engaged. But you'll see in the bottom right picture our speakers panel. Again, central to a summit. The speakers panel is answering questions from the students, telling their stories, being introduced by students, those kinds of things. That's what's key, and it takes a good coalition, a good partnership to design a day that looks like this, where kids walk away with certificates feeling that they had really received some important information and some direction on what to do next when they get back to their school. Next slide, please. So because I told you we had a very innovative group, we got into the elementary schools. We designed curriculum for grades 7 and 8 on anti-stigma work. We designed a grade 7 summit because we want to follow these grade 7 kids when they go into grade 8 and support any of their leadership mental health awareness activities as they move forward. And we are also going to follow them as they transition into high school. So we want to start building cultures of change. And again, the speakers were there. The kids loved it. Next slide, please. So again, this just gives you a better idea of how important those speakers are, because You know, when somebody tells you their story of recovery from an illness of depression or bipolar disorder or post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, and the like, that the kids are glued to the people who are telling the stories, and this is where they're doing a lot of learning. And often in a lot of the workshops that I do for parents or educators, I'll always bring a speaker with me. And I let them know that, 2 or 3 weeks from now, they may not remember anything that I said during that workshop, but they'll always remember a piece of the speaker's story and something that motivated them. Next slide, please. So we'll be on slide 30 coming up. The kids said, I want to do something. They're coming to the summits, and I want to go back and do something. This is just a little slide just to tell you some of the ideas that they've done in different schools here in Durham region after coming to an assembly. I'm always amazed at the creativity that students have, that when you give them, when you plant a little seed, they take that and they just make things grow all over the place. It's beyond my imagination what they can do. So they've gone off and they've done stigma walls, and they've had week or month-long awareness weeks or awareness months. They've done fundraisers. They even one school looked at every department in the high school, whether it was math or sciences or health or literature or whatever, and they identified famous people in each of those areas who are living with a mental illness, famous mathematicians or politicians or writers, and they made sure that even the departments were aware that much success can come from anyone, and we shouldn't limit anyone based on any illness that they have. So this is the kind of messaging that goes through, and they want to roll this out by having whole school assemblies where speakers will come and talk to all the students, whole grade assemblies. And I think when we saw in some of our evaluations, some of the work that Heather's just released to us, that they might be okay, the whole school assemblies, and getting information out, but I think the level of change isn't as great. The more time that we spend with the students will mean the more change that we're going to see. So when we go in class and spend, 6 hours or 7 hours working with a particular class of students, we're going to see a lot more shifting happening in that project than we would in a 1-hour assembly. And I'll show you some more graphs in a few minutes. Next slide, please. So educational partners of Embrace Tammy, again, elementary teachers are getting trained because they're delivering the project in their classroom. So we're in one elementary school and one high school every week. They're all doing their own events, and so that's how the schools are doing it. The kids are coming up with the ideas, and I think the schools and the administrators are also supporting it. Next slide, please. So this is from Heather's work, and this is just a beginning of what we're seeing in terms of changes. One of the scales was the violence and unpredictability items. So we're looking at pre-test and post-test, and you can see that the questions and the statements along the one side where it says people with a mental illness are often more dangerous. We're looking at pre-test, 36.4% strongly disagreed with that. And after hearing our speakers' stories and getting the education, that number jumped to 62.6%. So you're seeing shifts in a lot of the attitudes that some of these kids are having pre and post on violence and unpredictability. Another area that comes up, next slide, please. Number 33, controllability, how people tend to bring it on themselves, or people with mental illnesses don't try hard enough to get better, those types of items. When you look pre and post test, again, you can see changes that are happening after hearing our speaker stories. And I think what really helped us in working so closely with Heather Stewart was that when we look at the controllability items and we look at the tool that we're using to evaluate the kids, and the feedback that we're getting now, it's helping us share this information with our speakers, and it's giving us a clear idea on if we were going to shift a speaker's story, not change it, but shift it to focus on maybe something a little differently in their story, certainly the tool is giving us that information, and that's something that may be happening down the road as well. Next slide, please. And recovery, I think that's, again, that's what we've talked about since the webinar began, is that kids need to know that recovery is possible and that people with a mental illness recover at the same rate as somebody with any other illness. And this is something that is very, very strong in all of our speaker stories and the education that we provide. Next slide, please. This will be on slide 35. This is some information that we gleaned from our 2007 and 2009 work that we did. And again, we were looking at our different programs. We had a test, a control group, and we were looking at our in-class, our summits, and our assemblies just to see if we were on the right mark. And again, we were seeing some shifting in knowledge, of course. Next slide, please. And certainly some improvement in negative attitudes. And the summit, where they spend 8 hours here going through work, the summit was identified as the most effective program at decreasing negative stigma. Next slide, please. I'm glad to hear that Simran's on the line because we were in Yellowknife last February, and we will be going back to roll this project out into the grade 8s, and I'll probably connect with Simran to see if she wants to help us out with that. So it is something that has we're trying to work in other communities in the country as well. Next slide, please.
Slide 38 for folks on the telephone only. Slide 38.
Sorry, I'm new to this. So the lessons learned simply are that, as I said, students are limitless in their potential for becoming true positive advocates of change. There's a whole group out there that we're going to tap into. And that combination of education and positive personal contact is the thing that was working best. This is, in our experience, this is what's working. And it's the cross-section of partnerships that are making the work possible and the support of the agencies to keep this work going. Next slide, please, number 39. That's it for me. Thank you.